Hey guys, it's Grimdark Tyke, and today I am going to be making a tier list of every single coaster in Theme Park Tycoon 2. I've got all these coasters here. I've got a tier list website thing, and I am going to be making a tier list of all of them. I meant to do this video a while ago, but I ended up having a ton of homework, so I wasn't able to do it. But now I'm doing it, so yeah, it's finally happening. It was suggested by these two comments that you can see on screen right now. This is the way I got the idea. I didn't come up with this, so like the credit for the idea goes to them. And I do just want to say that this is my opinion. If you disagree, that's cool. You can disagree. I'm fine with that. But this is my opinion, so don't go saying I'm wrong. You can say why you think something deserves a higher or lower tier in the comments. But yeah, I'm also going to try to explain why I think what I think. Anyway, here we are on the tier list website. It was a pain to create an account for this, so that was kind of annoying. But as you can see, we've got all the tiers from S to F. If you don't know how a tier list works, S is the highest tier, then A, and then B, and then C, and then D, and then F. And then I have every single coaster in the game as of the current update, which is the Splash Boats update was the most recent one. If another coaster is added later, it will not be in this tier list because I am not making the video when that coaster would be in the game. Alright, so now I'm just going to get into ranking these. I'm going to start here, go all the way along. So let's start with the junior coaster. The junior coaster, you know, it's a nice little coaster. It's the cheapest coaster, usually one of the first ones people build. It can't do very much. It can only go like gentle slopes and slight banking. But I'd say it's a pretty nice coaster for if you want to make, obviously, a junior coaster. So for that reason, it's a pretty basic coaster. It's pretty simple, but it does what it needs to do, so I'm going to give it C tier. The next one is Wild Mouse, which is pretty interesting. So it can't go upside down. It's like the junior coaster, except it can go a little bit steeper and it has tighter turns. But the reason I'm only going to give it D tier is because I really don't see it used very well very often in the game. And this is also partly just because the coasters I build typically aren't the Wild Mouse style. So I don't really see very many of these, and I don't really build them very often, so it's just going to get a D tier. The next one is the Steel Coaster. This one just has to be a C tier. It's a solid coaster. It can do anything you need it to do. It can go upside down. Can't have any complicated things like boosters, but it's just a default solid coaster. So I mean, it fits pretty well into C tier. Then we've got the Steeplechase Coaster. This one's kind of like the junior coaster, except it's like a horse, and you're supposed to have two tracks that race or something. I don't know. It's kind of weird, but it's also kind of a cool idea. So I'm also going to put it in D tier with the Wild Mouse coaster. Alright, and I promise I'm not just going to put everything in C or D. A lot of these coasters are really good, but you know, the first ones are pretty basic, pretty simple, and also, but they're pretty solid. So I'm also going to give the inverted coaster a C tier because it's basically the steel coaster, but it's upside down. And I would probably put it higher, but then there's also the inverted coaster with 4 seats, which is kind of a better version of it. Alright, so this is going to be our first B tier, the multi-launch coaster, simply because it is the steel coaster, but it can boost, and boosts are amazing, so it gets B tier. That's pretty simple as well. And this next one, the spinning coaster, it's kind of hard to use, but I like it. It can spin, it makes interesting things, so I'm just going to put this in C tier. And up next, I'm just going to say this is my favorite coaster. Vertical launch coaster is probably one of my favorite coasters. It's got the vertical launch. I really like the way the car looks. You can use it in pretty much any situation. So it's just solid coaster. It looks good. It can do a lot. So I'm going to give this S tier because I also use it a lot. Alright, so the next one is the phase turbine coaster. And I'm just going to say I'm not a big fan of how this looks. I think it is a lot like the multi-launch coaster. It's kind of cool how it's got the rust and stuff look, but I just don't really like that look very much. So I'm going to say it's like the multi-launch, but it's just the worst multi-launch. So I'm going to say it goes in C. It also costs the exact same amount. Alright, and then here we've got the flying coaster. Now the flying coaster is a really cool concept. You know, it's a coaster you're facing down so you feel like you fly, but it really just does not translate well to Theme Park Tycoon at all. So I just have to give it a D tier. It's really hard to make coasters that you can really see anything when you're going through them, and if you're using the track view and just looking forward, then it's basically just an inverted coaster. You can do some interesting themes with it, but most of the time, it's just not going to be as useful as something like the inverted coaster. Next up is the inverted coaster with boosts, and this should be pretty obvious. it's just going to go up here in B tier with the multi-launch, because you know it's the same thing. It's like the multi-launch is steel coaster with boosts, and this is the inverted coaster with boosts. They both have the same track style, and these have the same track style. I don't really like the colors of this coaster, but I mean you can change it, so that's not really a problem. So I mean it's a solid B tier. Alright, and now we're starting to get into a few more of the more interesting and newer coasters. Like this one here, the Mine Train coaster, which interestingly, it was the first roller coaster that I made a video on when it came out. So, I mean, I really do like this coaster. It's pretty interesting. You might have seen the Mine Train coaster I made in my Basic Park series. I really like it. It's pretty cool, and it's pretty unique as well. So I'm going to give this one an A tier. The floorless coaster is pretty cool. I think it can boost, although I'm not 100% sure about that. It can do the little thingy where it goes over the edge and goes on the little thingy and stops, the hold brake. Yes, that's what it's called. And it's also a floorless coaster, which is pretty interesting. I used to use this one a lot, but I haven't used it as much recently, so I'm just going to give it a B tier. And now we have the single rail coaster. I really like this coaster. It is the single rail is pretty cool. It can do a lot. I think it has boosters. I think it got added boosters recently. I don't really know. I don't know what all the coaster features are, honestly. I haven't memorized them all. But one of my favorite coasters in real life is Railblazer at California's Great America, which is one of the only single rail coasters in the world. So yeah, it's pretty cool, and I like it. So this gets an A tier. The Beyond Vertical Drop Coaster was another one that I made a video on when it came out, and it's the first coaster that was added to have a 2-block wide station and track, I think. So it's pretty cool. It's got the custom piece that's the Beyond Vertical Drop. It's got a really cool look to it. So I'm going to give it an A tier. Only reason it wouldn't get an S tier is because you can do the Beyond Vertical with pretty much any other coaster, so that itself isn't too special, but it is still a really cool looking coaster. And then here's the Hyper Coaster. So the Hyper Coaster, I was really excited when it came out because it looked really cool. You could make hyper coasters with it. It's got that extra little piece on the front, and I really liked that. But the problem is I just don't use it very much. It's just hard to build like the really large coasters with it, and I just don't use it a lot. So I mean, I'm gonna give it a B because it's still good, but I mean, it's just I don't use it very much. And it's not really the best. And then we have the suspended coaster, and I'm just gonna put that straight into F tier because I built with it like twice, and I just really don't like the suspending aspect. It's the swinging rather. It's really cool. I like the coaster, but I don't find it useful. I like the idea, but I don't really like riding it, or I don't find it too useful. And then we've got the inverted coaster 4 seats across. I don't have much to say about this. This is literally just the inverted coaster, but wider. And so I'm going to give it an A because it also looks better, in my opinion, because it's a newer model. It's pretty recent, and it looks pretty cool, and I like it. All right, so here is the wing coaster and the dive coaster. They're almost the same coaster, so I'm just going to rank them kind of together, except not really. They've both got 3 seats across. They've both got the two little thingies on they both go to the sides of the track, which is kind of neat. I'm pretty sure the dive coaster is the only one out of these two to have the hold brake. And I do like how it's got 6 seats across instead of the wing coaster, which is just on either side. So I'm going to give this one an A, and I'm going to give this one a B. And now you can start to see how in the beginning it was all C's and D's, but now it's starting to skew a little more towards the A tier because a lot of these coasters are pretty good. And now we're to the final three. So these three, I like them all. But I'm going to give Wooden Coaster an S tier because I mean, I was tempted to give it an A because I had made a wooden coaster using the vertical launch coaster and the wooden frame supports and made custom supports, which took forever. And then a couple days after I finished it, the wooden coaster came out. But the wooden coaster is just so cool of a coaster. It's got the really cool looking supports. It looks really cool. It's also the only wooden type coaster in the game, and I really, really like it. It's also one of my favorite coasters. We've got also the hydraulic launch coaster. I haven't used it a ton, but it is the only coaster with the launch where it stops, which can be cool for like a big launch at the beginning. And I'm going to give it an A tier because another one of my favorite coasters is a hydraulic launch or some form of weight and then big launch, which is the Incredicoaster at Disney's California Adventure. I'm not actually sure if it's a hydraulic launch, but yeah, I like this coaster. It's a good coaster. And then the final one, which is the hybrid coaster, I'm going to put it up here in S tier along with the wooden coaster because it can do more than the wooden coaster because it can go upside down. I think it has boosts. I'm actually not completely sure if it has boosts. Again, I don't know if these things have boosts because most of the coasters that I build either don't have boosts or are specific types that have boosts. But the track is, although it does look very nice, it's not as nice as a wooden coaster, so I'd rank it a little bit lower than the wooden coaster, but it also still gets an S tier. And this is my final tier list. So we've got the S tier vertical launch, wooden coaster, and hybrid coaster. A tier we've got mine train, single rail, the beyond vertical drop coaster, 4-seat inverted coaster, dive coaster, and the hydraulic launch coaster. In B tier we have the multi-launch, inverted launch, floorless, hyper coaster, and wing coaster. In C we've got the junior coaster, steel coaster, inverted coaster spinning, and phased turbine coasters. And then in D tier, we have the Wild Mouse, Steeplechase, and Flying Coasters. And then in F tier, we have the coaster that I just absolutely can't make a good coaster with, which is the Suspended Coaster. Alright, so that is the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, or if you agreed or disagreed with any of my coaster placements, you could comment down below and tell me what it was. You might also want to check out some of my other videos, because you might enjoy those as well. Or subscribe, because that would be really cool, and I would appreciate it. And yep, that is all I have for this video, so goodbye.